when we get a school grade card and it's spread across like 8 subjects, 10 subjects, if you got an A star in one subject and failed every other class, like you'd be in front of the principal, you'd be suspended, you get a detention, your parents are getting called in. Do that in entrepreneurship, you're a billionaire. Right?
That's right.
If school was designed to encourage entrepreneurship, that grade card would be spread across 4 or 5 different people who each go and take their 2 best subjects and then combine their grades together. So what school has done is it's taught us that asking questions and learning from other people is cheating. So if you were to, if you're terrible at math and you're in an exam and you turn to your friend who's a genius and they say, hey, what did you get for number 2? Like, you're getting kicked out of school. You're definitely getting kicked out of that exam. Even if you do that in class, you're getting detention. In business, that saves you millions of dollars, months of time, and is just the best way to succeed is to say, hey, I'm really good at this bit, but I suck at this bit. Like, maybe I can give you my answers as to what I'm doing well, and you can give me yours. Or better still, maybe I could just do that bit for you, and you could do this bit for me, and we both move further forward. But school taught us that that's cheating. But that's not cheating. In business, that's innovation.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redmond.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
Yes. With me today in this corner, weighing in at an indeterminate amount of pounds or stone, is Philip Pelucha, internationally renowned celebrity entrepreneur, business and sports consultant, best known for the brand Billionaires in boxers, which we're going to get into today. Welcome to Yes Brand, Phil.
Thanks for having me. It's fun, and I'm glad you didn't give away my weight. That would have been rather embarrassing.
Well, I don't know your weight. I would have gladly given it away, and I would have been subjected myself to being weighed, but I think we're worth more than our weight. So.
Well, I hope so. I mean, yeah, if I could have my weight in gold, that'd be quite good. But
yeah, nice idea. Nice idea. I like the way that you say that you're known for taking brands from unknown to unrivaled. Mm-hmm. There's just such a great kind of healthy, competitive spirit about you. Where does that come from?
So I'm an ex-professional athlete, so that's probably where it comes from. From a very, very young age, I've been very sporty, and I often say that everything I've had and have achieved in business and that I teach in business I've learned from sport. Resilience, the fact that you learn more from your losses than you do from your wins, the fact that if you don't rest, because rest is such an important component of success, you're going to burn out and get an injury. That you can't take life for granted, because one bad injury and it could be game over. There's a lot of things that you can learn from sport. In fact, my business consultancy, my sports consultancy, the other side of my business, we actually ask the question a lot, and I'm in the process of writing a book at the moment, which is it better to teach business to sports or sports to business? Ooh. And it's been a fascinating question, because I think what you get from sports is this hunger, this serial winning attitude, this what's next kind of thing. Like, not sit back and rest on your laurels. It's like, great, we won the Super Bowl. What next? Right. Let's win it again. Right. But from business, you learn innovation and budgeting and relationships and networking and all the great stuff that make you a successful entrepreneur. So I think combining those two is a real recipe for success.
It also takes more than one skill or talent to succeed. There are a lot of people out there with natural talent, natural ability, but all these other things that let's say they don't want to be bothered to learn, or just don't come easily to them, and they don't make it, or they don't sustain,
So in my world, I talk about that being your superpower. So you've got to understand what your superpower is, and also the fact that it doesn't matter how good you are on the field. If you are not surrounded by players who are equally as good at their position as you are at yours, you are going to lose. You could be the best quarterback in the world, but if you're the only person playing, you're going to lose. Yeah. Right? Who are you passing to? You're going to get crushed. You're going to be in a wheelchair by the end of the game. You're going to be absolutely destroyed, right? So business is like a team sport. You have to identify first what your superpower is and what it is that you're best at, and then surround yourself with partners, employees, customers, mentors who are equally as good at their part, if not better on the field than you are.
Yeah, you always have to. So tell me where the Underdog Champion of the World moniker came from.
It was a gift, I suppose. So somebody was talking about my work. I'd won an award. We've been ranked number one in the world now for the past 6 years, and I think on the third occasion, just before COVID, actually, somebody, not saying that the two are connected, I hope not, but we got together for an award ceremony, and when somebody was bringing me on stage, they said, "What's interesting about Phil is that whilst the rest of these consultants are all trying to work with your blue chips and your Fortune 500 companies, Phil's not interested. Phil's teaching David how to slay Goliath. He's the underdog champion of the world." And that then got included in a write-up, and I actually thought, I really like that title. That's a cool title. It sums up who I am. So I was like, you know what? I'm taking that. Somebody's gifted it me. I'm owning it.
It's great because what it does is it relates to the challenger. You know, I work with a lot of challenger brands, what I call them. They're not the market leader. They're doing okay, but they need to get to another level. And I relate to that. And that's how I've always felt. I never have felt, even after conquering a certain feat or level or whatever I was trying to do, I never felt, oh, I'm at the top dog.
Yeah,
I'm number one. You know, I always feel like there really isn't a number one.
No,
you know,
it doesn't exist.
If you're doing it right, then you're striving.
Correct.
And if you're competing against yourself, that's probably the best thing, in which case you haven't won, right?
Well,
so
a couple of things to say about that, because I think you've just hit on a really sweet point there. So when I talk about professional athletes and incredibly talented sports players and even managers, they do get to the top of their industry and they are now competing, but they're competing against themselves. So they're competing against yesterday's version of them. And that constantly drives you forward for success. So, you know, someone said this to me the other day. They said, how does it feel to be ranked number one in the world for what you do? And my answer was, we were ranked number one in the world last year. Today's still up for debate. Like we still have to work for it every single day today to get to where we need to be. And you know, if I did the same as we did last year, I would consider that a massive failure, because every day we should be improving. We should be moving forward. So I think you're right. I think at some point you recognize that the best version and the most healthiest version of competition is with yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely the healthiest. I mean, I look at things, I'm trying to look at things in terms of grades of happiness. You know, for better or worse, this pandemic left us with a kind of a bellwether that's out of whack, right? So we don't know. It got dented. Something happened. It's like you wake up and something happened. Like it's not quite working. And we're like trying to figure out what values we want to embrace.
Okay. Yeah,
so we can either keep running and chasing stuff, or we can say, material things or stature. Or we can say, okay, I'm just going to chase happiness and I'm going to open myself to the different forms in which it might come. And for me anyway, like I would like to see Yes brand, which is essentially, branding, but I would like to see people, take on this idea of the yes and rule, which is the rule of improv. The idea that we're building on things and not breaking them down.
Correct.
There's nothing that you're going to say, Phil, that I would say no.
Yeah, sure.
Like I might say, what if it were this? Or I personally want to do this.
Yeah,
but I would never tell somebody no to their position. And
I like that idea, because I think that what that leads to is more of the standing on the shoulders of giants and looking at how you can learn and be motivated by other people. Whereas I don't feel like there's a lot of that. I feel like there's a lot of reinventing the wheel in business. People like, and I forgive me, but I blame the education system for that. The education system was not designed for entrepreneurs. It was designed for thinkers and for doers and workers, right? Not for those who are going to be creative and design things. And a couple of great examples of that are, when we get a school grade card and it's spread across 8 subjects, 10 subjects. If you got an A star in one subject and failed every other class, like you'd be in front of the principal, you'd be suspended, you get a detention, your parents are getting called in. Do that in entrepreneurship, you're a billionaire. right?
That's right.
If school was designed to encourage entrepreneurship, that grade card would be spread across 4 or 5 different people who each go and take their 2 best subjects and then combine their grades together. So what school has done is it's taught us that asking questions and learning from other people is cheating. So if you were to, if you're terrible at math and you're in an exam and you turn to your friend who's a genius and they say, hey, what did you get for number 2? Like, you're getting kicked out of school. You're definitely getting kicked out of that exam. Even if you do that in class, you're getting detention. In business, that saves you millions of dollars, months of time, and is just the best way to succeed is to say, hey, I'm really good at this bit, but I suck at this bit. Like, maybe I can give you my answers as to what I'm doing well, and you can give me yours. Or better still, maybe I could just do that bit for you, and you could do this bit for me, and we both move further forward. But school taught us that that's cheating. But that's not cheating. In business, that's innovation. And frankly, it's ingenious.
It's collaborating.
Correct.
That's how I felt. I always felt in school like I wanted to tell the teacher math was not my thing.
Yeah.
Math was not my thing. And, I would be invariably better at language arts than at science or math. Mm-hmm. And there were people who would excel at science or math and not do as well. And then there were people who would excel at everything, and they can go fuck themselves because that's really not fair.
Well, you
just
say
excel
that
at everything.
But I find that those people often fail at business because then they try and wear every hat, and you can't wear every hat in business.
Oh, that's a good point.
You come unstuck. So those people that were really good at things in school, if they try to become the entrepreneur, they always burn out around small business size because they're used to doing everything themselves. And it's not possible. Like I said earlier, business is a team sport. So think about that person as they were great as the running back and the quarterback, and they were left tackle. They were everything. They were the kicker. They were every role. That you put them in that role, they could do it. That doesn't mean they can play the whole team by themselves. It's not possible.
Yeah. And what role do you see as your central role in your organization?
Ooh, nice question. So I'll give you a sports analogy and I'll give you a business analogy.
Oh, I can't believe it.
So
I
know,
you're going to give
shocker,
me a sports analogy.
So
okay,
I was the winger. So in football, soccer for you, I was always the winger. So I can score some goals, but actually my best job is taking the ball, running down the wing, and providing opportunities for other people to score. And in a way, that's very much what we do within our business. So I am the stage and the spotlight. I am the person who takes you from unknown to unrivaled because right now you are your industry's best kept secret and nobody knows that you exist. So the formula that I use is that visibility plus credibility equals profitability. So if you're not as profitable as you want, it's always because visibility or credibility is lacking. And here's what it looks like. If you're visible but not credible, you're the person that does all the keynote speeches, you're always on TV, but you only make money while you're on TV. Then your brand dies off and people forget all about you again, right? Then there's what the other one is, which is what most people are, which is that they have credibility, they have no visibility. And that looks like this. Clients who love you, repeat business, referred business, nobody's looking for you. You are not the name that comes to mind in your industry when people need your services. That's a visibility issue. So the thing that I realized that was my superpower was I'm very good at helping other people to identify theirs, and I'm very good at giving them the stage, the spotlight, and filling the auditorium for them. What they say when they get up there, that's up to them.
How do you do that? How do you fill an auditorium for someone that is a best-kept secret?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's leverage credibility is the honest answer. So if we take our broadcast network, for example, so we reach... The network that we own exclusively, we reach 40 million homes across Europe and Africa on satellite television. We then have another 26 million homes in partnerships across global satellite television networks. Then we've got a top 5% podcast that reaches 1 million downloads plus each month, plus the streaming channels, plus 3 global radio stations that air our content. So what we're doing is leverage credibility in numbers. So if you will, and hopefully this doesn't come across as arrogant because it's really not supposed to, I knew that I was always really good at drawing that crowd. Right, I could capture that attention, I could get that network. And it was only a few years ago when one of my mentors said to me, you know that's not normal, right? Most people can't do that. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. And he said, now the thing is, you have a responsibility to use that to highlight your customers. Yeah. So if I fill the auditorium because it's like, look at the content, look at the people, look at the connections, look at the sports brands we've worked with, look at what we've achieved in business, well, now it's my obligation to put on a show that's me on stage for 5 minutes introducing and bigging up my clients who are currently unknown so that the audience here gets to introduce them. Because I firmly believe that if they knew they existed, they'd want to do more business with them.
That's perfect. That's really well said. And the truth is that you are identifying the right players in the right positions.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's, and I don't mean that lightly, because I think that's hard to do.
Yeah.
I struggled with that a lot in my own career, because if you're good in front of the camera or behind the microphone, but let's say you don't have the information that the audience needs, you know, then what is it? If you have
Correct.
the information and you haven't acquired the skills to perform, then you can't deliver the information. But you might be great at delivering it if someone only taught you how.
You're so right. I mean, we've all heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right?
Yeah.
And in a very similar vein to what you were just saying there, one of the things that I say is that phrase is not true. It's combining what you know with who you know. Because if you know something but you don't know the right people, you are your industry's best kept secret. But if you know the right people but you don't know anything, you are a massive wasted opportunity.
Right.
So it's combining the two together. And I think my superpower, and often the superpower is the thing that we can't teach, right? Superman can't tell you why he flies. Spider-Man can't tell you how he climbs a wall. Like, it's just that thing that you are inherently good at. It's also often the thing that we put down and say, oh, anyone can do that. You know, we try and disempower it and say, oh, well, that's just that thing I do. Well, my thing is being able to spot future industry leaders. My thing is being able to spot the diamond in the rough and saying, they've got something, but nobody knows that they exist. If I put them on the stage, they're going to shine, they're not going to crumble. And that's where I then start to combine the what you know with the who you know.
I'm fascinated by the whole process because I see it as like a blooming process and a real like fulfillment process, which is really, really valuable for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody in the picture. So, okay, so give me an example of somebody you worked with who was a diamond in the rough, and you've kind of honed that and shaped that.
Well, it sounds like a strange thing to say, but, you know, there's a guy, in fact, I think it's how we met. We met on podmatch.com, right?
Yeah.
Podmatch is owned by a guy called Alex Sanfilippo, who has now gone from doing work with me directly to now being a partner of mine. You know, he had this concept of, I want to bring podcasters together. Everyone else was going through this, you know, quantity rather than quality kind of mindset, and he wanted to stick to that. He's also very philanthropic. You might not know this about him. He runs a number of soccer leagues that are based around philanthropy.
Wow.
And he's an awesome example because he is somebody, and the reason I'm using him as an example is because if we look at the trajectory of where he started to where he is now, he is going to be that big person in the industry. He's going to be the person that when your audience are listening to this in 6, 12, 18 months time, he's going to be the person that you look at and go, okay, wow, that's pretty cool. There's also a number of clients that we've worked with that, honestly, nobody had ever heard of these people ever before, and now they're crushing TED Talks, and they are the person in their industry. But here's the thing about the TED Talks and the interviews and all that kind of stuff. It's that perception. How do I word this? Perception beats perfection, right? It's more important how people see you than how you actually are. Right? I heard somebody put it in a really nice way the other day, which is, it's more important to be best known than be the best. And I thought that's a really interesting way of putting it. Now, don't get me wrong. You've got to be able to back it up. You've got to be able to do the work. You've got to be able to elevate it. But how many people strive for perfection before they put themselves out there? Oh, I won't write that book yet because I'm not quite ready. Oh, I won't do that talk yet. I won't. And here's the thing, and I'm sure you know the same thing with the work that you do. I've never been in a keynote speaker's room with anybody that didn't have the exact same thoughts that those people are having right now, right? Yeah. The people going, they're going to find out I'm an imposter any minute, that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. This is going to go really badly. They feel really intimidated by the other people who are in the room. It's like, oh, it's that guy and it's her, and oh my, I can't believe I'm in here. Every single one of them feels the same. And if they don't, they're a psychopath, right? Every single person in that room feels the same. And then the only difference between the people that are at the top of their industry and the people who are languishing at the bottom completely unknown is that one invited themselves and the other let fear stop them. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's one thing to be invited. It's another thing to invite yourself.
You have to.
Say,
You have to invite yourself, Hirsch. Honestly, that's the thing that I think most people don't understand here is that there are only, when you watch like Oprah or anything, or you watch TED Talks and you think, how did that person get that talk? How did they get that interview? Let me give you the answer. I'm literally ruining the industry right now. There are only two ways they got there. They paid someone a lot of money to introduce them who already knew them, i.e. a celebrity publicist or whoever, or they strategically networked their way there and invited themselves. If you are not putting time and effort and money into those two things, don't expect to get the invite. Nobody's going to knock on your door and discover you. That's not how that works. It just isn't. I mean, if you've ever worked with a television producer or an editor of a newspaper or magazine, you know how many stories and people they get pitched on a daily basis? You think they're going to bypass all of those people and just go scouring LinkedIn looking for someone that they've never heard of before and come and invite you? It's not going to happen. You have to invite yourself, and that's the first step that I think a lot of people, once they realize that and they realize that they have the ability and the power to do that, now the rules of the games have changed. Now we can have some fun.
Yeah, I love it. I was just with Alex in Orlando at
Oh, great.
Podfest.
Yeah, I saw the pictures.
Yeah, and there's an aura around him now where, people who have not known him, I haven't known him that long. It can't be more than 8 months or 9 months.
Yeah.
But I think even during that time, I've seen this kind of enormous eruption around him, and it's great. It's deserved and it's appropriate. But for sure, it's like, there are a lot of people that I have met in the podcasting world and in the business world who have invited themselves to their own party. You know what I mean? You
have to, because having a good idea is like, Alex came up with a great idea for the platform. He's got his Pod Pros, he's got Pod Match, he's got loads of stuff going on. The question that you want to ask back to him is, so what? So what? You got a great concept. Loads of people have a great concept. How is yours going to be the one that stands out? Why is yours going to be the one that's full of quality? Why is yours going to be the one that has a Podmatch elite mastermind attached to it where people pay thousands of dollars just to come and hang out in a room with you? Why would that be the case? Well, it's because of the way that you position yourself. Because frankly, nobody will ever... I say this about entrepreneurship all the time. Nobody is ever going to be crazy enough to pay you as much as you pay yourself.
Yeah.
Never, right? No one's going to pay me as much as I pay myself. I mean, I work 2.5 days a week and make millions of dollars. There's no way anyone's going to give me that job. It doesn't exist, right? Believe me, I looked for it. It doesn't exist, right? So the same can be said of credibility and inviting yourself. Nobody is going to care as much about your health as you do. Nobody's going to care much about your wealth as you do. Nobody is going to care as much about your success as you do. So if you're not inviting yourself and you're not positioning yourself and you're not trying to get yourself to stand out, how the hell do you think it's ever going to happen?
Yeah. Well, tell me a little more about your story and how it happened for you.
Great question. So, not the best start. I grew up in a single-parent family, lots of poverty, but also lots of abuse. So I was in and out of the social care system, drugged from a very young age, lots of violence, just wasn't a nice situation. Kicked out of school at 14. I was homeless around the same time. Football literally saved my life. So if I hadn't have got that scholarship that came with an accommodation bursary, who knows what would have happened. I then played professionally for a number of years and then got medically retired in my early 20s and basically had a mini breakdown because I had no idea what I was anymore. I'd finally gone from being this nobody kid in care and going through a lot of abuse to being Phil the footballer. And now I wasn't anymore. So somebody stole my identity. And I tried going into coaching and I hated it. I mean, I often describe it as being like a recovering alcoholic trying to manage a bar.
Yeah.
I wanted to be on the field, not on the side of the field, teaching people how to be on the field. This was tough. This was torture. So I had to separate myself from the game and go away. And I went and did a number of degrees, and I worked for some of the largest real estate brands in the world and got to board level and suddenly kind of made a decision. My wife got pregnant. My mum, who was a lot older at that point, developed stage 4 cancer. She was in the UK, and I was living in South Africa at the time. And my younger sisters essentially rang me and said, you need to come home and help. So I came back, pregnant wife, and decided that there was no point taking a corporate job anymore. I was going to set up my own business. Brilliant timing, right? Dying mother, pregnant wife, new country. Let's start a business. That sounds like the most logical thing to do.
Yeah.
So Anyway, so went and started the business. Didn't have a great deal of success when I first started. I was a classic example of my industry's best kept secret. Nobody knew that I existed. And I thought the fact that I'd worked for these big brands would really help me. It didn't. Nobody cared, right? And even the clients that I wanted to work with who I'd previously worked with, as an employee, they wouldn't work with me because they have terms of business that say you've got to be in business for 2 years before they'll engage with you as an agency. So I was screwed, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I was probably about 6 weeks away from going back and getting a quote-unquote real job. And one night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was thinking about my sports podcast, because I'd previously sold a sports podcast. I've actually now sold 2, but that's a story for another day. And I remember thinking that the power of the podcast wasn't in the content. The power of the podcast was in networking. It was in my ability to meet with whoever the hell I wanted to meet with and learn with them. Like, if I wanted to meet a professional player, well, I contact their agent, I contact the club, and they go, well, why? Because I want to meet them. It's like, yeah, all right, good luck. They leave you alone. But if I contact that person and bring them onto a podcast to talk about their career or their philanthropic interest, now they'll talk to me, right? And I suddenly realized that the power of podcasting wasn't the content. The power of podcasting was in having this VIP networking tool to meet with whoever the hell I wanted to meet with. So the very next morning I woke up and I made a list of the top 100 clients that I wanted to work with, and I invited each of their CEOs onto a podcast to talk to me about their career and tell me what they're working on in their business right now and give them some free publicity.
Right.
Fast forward 3 months, I've now got a team of 20 plus people working for me worldwide. We've bitten off way more than we can chew. Business is just growing exponentially, and it's been awesome. And I've basically made every mistake possible along the way since then. I sold 2 businesses. I lost a massive amount of money on one business. I've essentially tried to learn this formula. So if I knew one step through 5, and then step 6 I make a mistake and I collapse again, I start another business, go right back to step 5 because I know the blueprint, and then make a different decision at step 6. Now next time I get to step 11 and it all implodes again, and then I go, right, I know how to get back to 11. When I get to 12, I'm going to make a different decision this time. And that's how I've learned.
Or find a business that only has 3 decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not wrong.
And then, or 5, and you're like, oh, I'm going to get a 1 to 5 business. Yeah. And then I can keep replicating it because I can always get to level 5.
It's like I can crush this. Absolutely. So for me, that was really it. And then what started to happen was, podcasting started to become more and more prevalent. Can I swear? Can I curse?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
you may.
All right, I want to check. So I have a phrase which is every knobhead has a podcast. Because when I first started, half the questions were like, what's a podcast? Now everyone's got a podcast. So it's no longer that thing that makes me special, you know?
Well, those people listening to my show are like, what's a knobhead?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it is. But
we could go with, so, dickhead, knobhead.
Every dickhead.
Every dickhead has a podcast.
Every putz, every schmuck.
Everyone has a podcast. Like
has a podcast.
And it's ridiculous. So back then it used to make you stand out. Now it doesn't.
Yeah.
So then it became, well, what's next? And it's like, well, actually, radio is still more beneficial and still more respected than podcasting. At least it was then. And it was like, so if I can get on a national or international radio station, that's more powerful than just having the podcast.
Right.
So then we started to do that. But then streaming channels came out. So now everyone's got a streaming channel, and it's like, God, to keep moving the fucking goalpost. So now it was like, now I need TV, right? Satellite TV, because that still trumps the streaming channel, and it's still, so that's the way I'm going to go. And that's essentially how we continue to build our network, it was just constant leveling up. It was just, what's that thing that makes us special? What do we now need to have the VIP tool to talk with who we need to talk to? And the cool thing about this is it doesn't just work for sales, right? It's great for sales, but it doesn't just work for sales, which is why I'm reluctant to call it a lead generation tool, because it's a spotlight, and whatever you shine that spotlight on becomes illuminated. So if you want investors and you're inviting potential investors onto a show and getting to know them, you're more likely to get the investment. If 8 to 9 months before an exhibition takes place, you're inviting on the event organizer to help them get sponsorship and sell tickets, and then you say to them, hey, I'd love to get involved in what you're doing, you're far more likely to be offered a keynote speaking gig or a workshop or VIP tickets to that particular event. If you want more clients, everybody's messaging clients saying, hey, do you want to have a virtual coffee? Do you want to read my free ebook? Do you want to do my shit course? Like, they're all saying the same stuff. So if everybody else is going right, you've got to go left. So if everybody else is take, you've got to use law of reciprocity and give, get. Hirsch, love what I'm seeing about your business, brother. Listen, I got this idea. I have a satellite television network that reaches 40 million homes, top 5% podcasts with 1 million downloads each month, plus some streaming channels and radio stations. I do not charge my interviews, and I like to elevate future industry leaders, and that's what I see in you, brother. Would you like to join me for an interview?
Right, yes,
Right.
of course.
Well, yes, of course. Okay, look, Hirsch, let me just be completely transparent with you. I don't charge for the interview. It is not a prerequisite for you to become a customer, but a lot of people that come on the show do become clients because they see that I am the guy that can get them to that top spot in their industry. If you're cool with that, and we'll just kind of have an idea and bounce around some ideas, make some introductions for each other, let's get something booked in.
Yeah, that's great.
Look at that as a lead generation tool rather than, hey, Hirsch, you want to have a virtual coffee? Hey, Hirsch, you want to do my shit course?
Right.
Like, you want to read my book that even my mum didn't read? Like, it's nonsense. So it's always been about how do you get that VIP networking tool. And what's above satellite TV? Well, other than more satellite TV customers, movies, right? So at one point, we'll end up in movies. I'm convinced of it. We will mention some movies because that has to be the next level. When suddenly everyone's going to have a satellite TV show, and that's where we're going to have to go to next. Yeah. And then who knows where from there.
Well, yeah, and there's no... I mean, look, the whole idea of branded entertainment is... to me, is always very silly in the sense that entertainment's always been branded. Yeah. Somebody has to pay for it. So, you know, what did they do in the 50s, in the golden age of television? The girl would dress up like a cigarette box and dance across the screen, or the host would be smoking and start selling Lucky Strike. It's like that was branded entertainment in 1953. So it's like, you know, what are we talking about? It's a question of who's paying for it and who's selling it and providing it. And it's really that dynamic. In other words, is a studio getting funded from somewhere else, and then a studio solicits the best ideas and then, you know, develops them with... So is it a top-down thing, or are the creators like us, you know, on the bottom and then building everything up to where the brand sees the value in it and then wants to take it up and... you know, over
I think the cool part about what you just said there is that we get to choose our hierarchy. So there are people who are content creators, and they're creating content and they're not leveraging it. It's doing nothing for their business. Hirsch, I can't tell you the number of podcasters I've spoken to, and they're like, I'm 30 episodes in and I've never made a bean from my podcast. And I'm like, then you're doing it wrong. And they're like, should I charge guests to come on? And I'm like, no, that's like the worst model in the world. And it's like, well, maybe I should get advertising sponsors. And it's like, yeah, maybe. I mean, but like, how much money is that going to put in your back pocket? Like, why don't you monetize and leverage the relationships? Podcasting and content creation for me is about learning and about earning. I'm always doing one of those two things. So I'm either earning directly or indirectly from the conversation, or I'm learning something that helps me to elevate and grow. Always, every single time without fail. I even have this method that I use called the 4 Ps, which is purchasers, partners, promoters, and platforms. So purchasers, pretty obvious, they're customers. Partners is people who partner with you and introduce you to more customers. In my world, we call these NCPs, non-competitive partnerships. So who works with the same target audience that you do, but delivers a different service or product. Third is a promoter. As in, who's a super fan that can introduce you to more of the first two, but really isn't one of the first two. And the fourth one is platforms, television, podcast, radio, stage, whatever it's going to be for you. But what's the stage and platform that introduces you to more of the first three? Because if somebody isn't one of those 4 Ps, why are we talking to them?
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people fall down, is they're like, oh, I own 50 episodes and I've never made any money. And you go, great, out of those 50 potential guests, how many of them were one of the 4 Ps? And they come back and go, 4. I say, right, that's why you've not made any money then.
Yeah. I do think that sometimes it can be challenging to figure out which, and obviously, you know, which role, but you've narrowed it down. I mean, at this point, it's a criteria. Yeah. The criteria isn't, and what I love about the 4 Ps is that the criteria isn't, you know, do they have a book? The criteria isn't, you know, do they have their own podcast, or it's not as specific as that. No. It's a very clearly defined set of rows, and do they fit in one or more of these rows? It's
a formula, isn't it? I mean, and that's what I like, is this is not an off the shelf one size fits all. Like if I said they must be an author, well, is that relevant for everybody? Like not really. In fact, not at all. Whereas the 4 Ps are relevant for everybody, because that's going to be a different person that falls into each one of those rows for your business and for my business and for somebody else's business, but it's the same formula that applies. And, very, very good friend of mine and mentor says successful people repeat successful actions. And that formula has had nothing but success. So take it and repeat it.
Yeah. Don't try to be a genius where you're not.
Yeah.
Or where it's not needed.
Correct. Stand on the shoulders of giants.
Don't be a genius walking around a wilderness. Yeah. Where they don't need geniuses.
What I want you to do is improve and innovate. Take what's working and make it better. Take what's working and evolve it and adapt it. Don't look at something and go, "That's a good idea. I wonder if I can design my own system." That makes no sense, right? Just take what's already working and then apply your own personal stance on it. That is how you generate success, because now you're starting, at step. As we were talking about earlier, you're now starting at step 11 and 12 because 1 through 12 is already built for you. Don't start at number 1. That's foolish.
Great. Yeah. That is the notion of yes brand in the global sense. Philip, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate it. I would love it if you could, have the last word and just bestow any thought you want on the audience. It can be across the spectrum. It's your moment, but I don't want to leave anything unsaid that you'd like to say, so I'm giving you the floor.
No, I appreciate that very much. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure. I hope the audience have enjoyed this. You know what? I would just implore anybody who's listening to this to stop waiting to be discovered. You have to invite yourself. And whether you figure out a way of doing that yourself, whether you employ somebody like me, whether you find somebody else who resonates with you, I'm not fussy about who you do this with. It's more important than you do it with me. Right? I just want you to find out how you invite yourself, because if you feel like your industry's best kept secret, that if more people knew that you existed, they would want to do business with you, then you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your market to invite yourself.
Alright.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and?
it worked for you,
Yes, then?
subscribe and leave a
Yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.